Most of us don't struggle because we're too weak. We struggle because we're too alone. We've learned how to manage, how to perform, how to keep it all together, but not how to be known. And so we build lives that look fine on the outside while something inside of us quietly carries shame, fear, or loneliness. But what if the very thing we've been taught to avoid, vulnerability, is actually the doorway to healing? What if being honest about what's real is really where transformation begins? Today, we're talking about the power of vulnerability, not as a trend or a buzzword, but as a path for connection, freedom, and becoming whole. You're listening to the Becoming Whole podcast. I'm your host today, Aaron Taggart. I'm one of our spiritual coaches here at Regeneration. Today, I'm joined by two incredible guys who are helping create spaces where people can step out of hiding and into honest, life-giving connection. Jamie and Blake are the voices behind the 3% podcast. This is a podcast that started with a heart for men, but speaks to something much bigger, the human need to be known. Their message is simple, but not easy. Most people settle for surface level living, but there's a small percentage who are willing to tell the truth, the whole truth, take off the mask, and step into vulnerability. Through their conversations, they're challenging the way that we think about strength, honesty, and connection, inviting people out of isolation and into deeper, more authentic relationships. Jamie and Blake are also therapists in the Nashville area. And a strong plug. I know that their podcast is primarily for men and what they're doing there, but you got to listen to them. Jamie and Blake, it's really great to have you guys here.
Man, Aaron, that's
such a humbling intro.
Yeah, my goodness, that was incredible.
I love that. Usually, it's uncomfortable to be on the other end of an intro, but that was, as you were saying that, I was like, man, that's even more clearly articulated of what we're trying to do. Sometimes we say it, and so that's super kind of you. And we're really glad to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I was thinking about, what episode, to do, to plan, we go through this, kind of planning, and the idea of vulnerability came up, and I knew like immediately, I've got to get Jamie and Blake from the 3% on here, because I just feel like, from just listening to your guys' podcast, the 3%. I've been so encouraged and stirred and reminded in my own journey of the power of what happens when we're vulnerable. But that dichotomy is that we're not all in this place of real deep vulnerability. And so that just gave me this beautiful idea. Like, let's just talk and unpack a little bit about vulnerability today. But before we do that, I know our listeners would probably love to just get a little glimpse, from you guys. And I've listened to your podcast. So like, if I, hammer down like for time, because I love how you guys can linger and you say like, oh, we're going to land the plane, 5 or 6 times before the plane touches down. Which I
we circled
love.
the airport. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. I hadn't got clearance for landing yet.
That's right.
Inclement weather.
Yes. So guys, tell us a little bit about yourselves, kind of like your journey and how you got to the 3% podcast.
Yeah. So
you're the one that synthesizes things. So why don't you take the
let me. What did you say? Hammer down. I'll get into it.
I'll give you an hour-long answer to that question.
Yeah, because if we go individually, both Blake and I have a history of what in the therapy world they would call big T trauma, like, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with. Big T and little T trauma. It's in the zeitgeist for sure, but all that to say, we have big, painful experiences that both of us have had individually, and those were very different experiences, but both very painful. we also have lots of little t experiences, so smaller, as Dan Allender would say, the more subtle but satanic experiences that um, led to us being in these attachment patterns that left us in pain and in need. And because of the combination of those experiences, which either of us would be happy to elaborate on. I'm not trying to stay vague. I'm just trying to go quick.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's good.
um, because of the combination of those experiences, both of us landed in 12-step recovery for porn addiction. And this was in 20 well, you went a little bit before me, and then I joined it in 2017. We met in 2018, March of 2018. And our sponsors were like, "Hey, you guys are the young dudes in here. You guys should date." And so they basically were like, "Hey, a pillar of 12 step, as many of your listeners will be familiar with, is to make phone calls."
Mm,
Ultimately, in my view, one of the greatest desires of the 12-step community is that you would be in just that, a community. And so making the phone calls is a pillar because this has been a problem of isolation. The solution will come in connection. So they make you call people, and really it felt forced.
Yeah.
And because many of these men were older than us, that's on its own a barrier to entry to that. So it was really gracious of our sponsors to be like, "Hey, you guys call each other and see if you can start building some connection there." We left that meeting. Blake immediately called me, and from then on, what was that? 8 years ago. 8 years is 96 months. Fast math.
Impressive.
And
that's better than I could do.
yeah. And in
Show
those
off.
96 thank you, flex. In those 96 months, I would say there are probably a cumulative 5 months that we have not spoken on the phone. So we developed this really rich, if not pen pal-esque,
Yeah.
relationship over the phone where we were checking in with each other and bringing what level of vulnerability we could to each other. That's where the 3% idea comes in. When we entered into 12 step, we were, I would say, generously 50% honest.
On a good day.
Yeah, with ourselves and other people. And in the meetings, you would experience ever greater levels of honesty. Um, as I'm sure with your groups that you lead, there's this level of honesty that people engage with that's really inviting and somewhat terrifying.
Mm,
And as we experienced the ever greater levels of honesty and became comfortable being around it, what we started to recognize is that, yet we were still coming back saying, "Hey, I slipped this week, or I acted out this week, or I had a relapse this week." And we started to name, well, the why of that is that at our very best, we are 97% honest. And it's the 3% that we keep to ourselves that binds us to shame and loneliness, from which a lot of our other issues stem. And so we began to use 3% as a shorthand just in our friendship. This was not a business idea. Just
yeah.
in our friendship, it was I would call, Blake would call, and we would start the conversation with, well, maybe there'd be some banter, some ribbing of each other. Like you said, we do like to poke fun at each other. So after you get through that, then it would be setting the stage for the necessary conversation by saying, "I need to share my 3% with you." And in asking for that, you are saying so much by saying so little. You're saying, "I'm scared. I feel ashamed. I believe in my body that you're going to reject me when I tell you this.
Mm.
I need compassion. I need your attention, and I need it to be locked in, and I need
Mm,
safety." And in all of that, you can just say, "I need to share my 3% with you," and it sets the stage for that. That's what it
mm,
created in our friendship. And it was a permission slip to choose connection where otherwise there would be shame and loneliness.
mm.
And that was kind of the basis for creating a business, of which we had other ideas first. We're never at a lack for ideas, Blake and I. Uh, we had a different business idea first. We had a retreat in 2021 to talk about that. And on that retreat, I think it was probably a spiritual experience of saying, like, we have no energy towards this other idea that we would be very capable of and make good money doing.
Mm.
And instead, it became clear we need to use our 3% idea to impact what it looks like for men. I mean, and it's welcomed in women, but the intention was to help men become safer with themselves, God, and others. And in being safe for themselves, they can create safety for other people. And
Mhm.
what greater gift could we give other people than to offer them safety? And what greater gift could we offer ourselves than to choose that safety?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. I mean, I hear like a code word, like a safe word, like if you're watching, there's a particular Christmas movie, right, that I'm thinking of, and this couple, goes, their parents are divorced. They go to a couple different places for, their, holiday family things. Their trip gets canceled. And then they're kind of like found out that they were skipping out on Christmas with their families. And then they have this kind of safe word, like if something unravels, when they're there, they say this code word, and to me, I kind of hear like, man, this 3% not only is maybe it started sort of as like a code word that, man, you just encapsulate so much in, hey, like I've got, I want to share my 3%, and it just
Yeah.
reframes that entire, what, like, I mean, no matter how you guys are both maybe coming in, it's like, man, when you say that 3%, it's like, okay, like face like flint, like
Yep.
my ears are up, like, I'm
Yep.
attuning.
Exactly.
Man, beautiful.
Yeah, when you understand the concept in I need to share my 3% in 6 words, it says what I'm about to say is scary, what I'm about to say I have likely shame around. I don't wanna say this, but I am choosing to because I value our relationship. I need you to not be sarcastic. I need you to not make a joke. I need you to really pay attention to what I'm about to say. Like, it communicates so many things that just makes it quicker, hopefully, to facilitate that deeper connection. And then when you so originally we had a hat run, like we are very into kind of style, and we had these hats made before we even like launched the podcast. We
Right.
paid
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
25 hats and we
Nice,
just like
nice.
sold them to our friends. And it's just a simple cap and it's got a patch on the front that says 3%. And the intention was if you're wearing that, I may not wear a shirt that says feel your feelings just because I just personally wouldn't. I believe in that, but I'm not going to wear that. But if I have this cool looking thing that somebody's curious about, I haven't even told you this yet, Jamie. I've had a friend that wears the hat often, Brad,
Mm.
and just he always tells me like, "Yep, somebody again asked me what 3% was," and just the other day he was like, "I'm to the stage of my life now where I'm playing pickleball on Saturdays with all the old guys in our neighborhood," and he said some 60-year-old guy came up to me and I was wearing the hat and he said, "What's 3%?" And he was like, I told him what it meant, and it turned into this hour-long conversation between him and this stranger where they were talking about faith and parenting and vulnerability and how it's hard to have friendships as a man as you go through stages of life. And I was like, "That's
Wow.
exactly what we hoped it would do." And so
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. It is sort of like a code word to hopefully facilitate conversations that otherwise there's a lot of barriers to have that level of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, like at the core and heart of it, it's allowing yourself to be fully known.
Mhm.
That's right.
And that's how we're created, to be known and to know.
Mm.
And I love that the problem is, right, there's so many of us, and even probably at times you guys' self, myself, that kind of holds back somewhere, like, that 3%.
Mhm.
um and it's this sort of leaning into, like, what maybe moves that marker to reach out, right? And to be known, to share, to be that vulnerable. And that's what we're talking about today, right? Is the vulnerability behind that 3%. So why do you guys feel like people struggle so much with that vulnerability piece, that 3%?
Hmm. So many ways to answer that question.
The classic therapist answer of, well, it depends.
What initially comes up for me when you ask that, Aaron, is because that person's one answer. It's not like this is the reason why.
Sure,
One of the
sure.
reasons is because that person's vulnerability, God-given vulnerability, was not cultivated by the people who were meant to cultivate it, and maybe even
Mhm.
were, or maybe even more tragic, not even just the lack of cultivation, but maybe that vulnerability was abused,
Yeah.
Mm.
or it was used for um, something that it was not intended to. And so then if I'm like, we're in the stage, both of us, where we have young kids, toddlers, and I mean, talk about, I've never thought about it that way, but like, I am helping cultivate my daughter's vulnerability, sometimes more successfully than others. And so for a lot of our clients that we work with, a lot of men we see, even in ourselves, that vulnerability was not cultivated, not handled with care, was abused in cases. And so when you have that experience, then you you replicate the same thing in yourself, um, and then you don't cultivate your own vulnerability. And then, unfortunately, that gets to the point where you hit some sort of rock bottom, or there's some crisis in your life that then forces you to reckon with the lack of cultivating your own vulnerability. Because when you don't, then your body, your nervous system tries to cope with that in all sorts of ways that could be damaging. So that's kind of the first, maybe a more broad reason that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I fully agree with it. Like, um, maybe to put it, it's a similar idea, but to put it maybe slightly differently, how has your vulnerability been held previously? I think if who is it that says, maybe it's Dan Allender again, that everyone makes sense in the context of their story. Is that Dan?
I don't know if he's the originator, but I've heard him say that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The originator of all ideas that Blake and I have. Um, so the idea being that none of what we struggle with in our experience as therapists is random. So in our stories, and I'll speak specifically for me, those little T and big T experiences that I was referencing, one of the harmful ways that they colored not just those experiences, but every experience since then is, well, how did my vulnerability in those spaces keep me safe or cause me to not be safe? And often there's a lot more experiences of caused me to not be safe when you're vulnerable. And
Mhm.
when we are children or developing, we don't have agency to affect what happens with our vulnerability. We just have to trust that our vulnerability is cared for.
Mm.
Now, as adults, we have the ability to affect what happens with our vulnerability. That's what boundaries are.
Mhm.
And if people can't honor our vulnerability now, we can do something about that. But we don't know that in our bodies because our only experience with vulnerability is having no agency over what happens with our vulnerability. And if
Mm.
no one has properly cared for it when we had no agency, then
Mhm.
why in the world would we trust people with our vulnerability now?
Mhm.
It's
Mm.
it's one of the phrases that I use often with my clients of like, "Of course you're not vulnerable. Why would you be vulnerable?
Mm.
This deserves to be a new idea for you, not one that you're familiar with. your vulnerability was never treated with kindness, compassion, respect, autonomy, safety, none of it. So why in the world would you expect your body to believe that's how it'll be treated now?
Mm.
Mm.
And that's why vulnerability, in my opinion, is a choice that has to be made by everybody once you learn that you now have different agency.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah. And so I'm even hearing too, guys, like as you're talking about that, like there's a real need to understand your experience with vulnerability from your story and to know. So like, in other words, really to know your story
Yeah.
behind these different places of and experiences of vulnerability. I mean, I'm my mind is just going 100 miles an hour right now because I can think of moments where I'm one of those emotional guys. I mean, I could almost cry on like a dime. Like just. But there were also seasons where it was like, okay, like that's tough guys don't do that. Like
Mhm.
I can't be like this. I can't be seen this way. I've gotta look like this to make people think this.
Mhm.
And so even just like, yeah, there are so many places in our stories where and it's not just a one-off, right? I think there's so many different places where we actually experience, you know what, I did open up this one time and this is where it got me. And so now maybe I made a vow or some sort of, agreement that, man, I am never gonna open up again. I am never gonna be known this way again. Um, and that's a scary place to be.
Well,
Yep.
it's even interesting, Aaron, that you say like I'm one of these emotional guys. One, every time somebody comes into a session with me and they're like, "I'm not really emotional," I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
let's check in again."
What did
And
you say the only two emotions you ever experienced when you first started therapy?
the numb or angry, and that was real, right? Like there's the
Mm,
scale was all or nothing
Mhm.
essentially, and
mm,
that's not because I was unemotional. As it turns out, Blake can attest, I'm a deeply emotional guy.
yeah.
I had to work so hard to numb
Mm,
how acute my sense of feeling is. And the difference being like if you think about somebody with incredible eyesight, no one shames them for having a reaction
Mm.
that is different than them to how acute their eyesight is. No
mm,
one's like, "Wow, see much?" Like, that doesn't happen. Yet, our sense of feeling is the same thing as any other sense. It's a gift in and of what it is, and it gives us information.
mm,
If you have an acute sense of feeling, because I do still agree that there are ranges of, of the sense of feeling. Some
Yeah.
people feel more acutely than others.
Right.
But that should be seen as a superpower, just like we do when somebody's like, "Yeah, my eyesight's 20/10." You're like, "Whoa, that's crazy." When somebody's like, "I feel very acutely," they may be able to sense something that you cannot.
Mhm.
And what
mm,
what a gift that is. We've treated it as a weakness
Mhm.
because we don't know what to do with vulnerability.
Mm.
mm,
That's the difference.
mm.
I've never thought about it like that comparison to the other how you framed it that way.
Yeah.
Mhm. Man, me neither. The sensory like aspect of that. I love it. What a beautiful
Yeah.
framing. And thanks for that reframe too, because you're right. Like, um, yeah, I think by habit we can say things that we're, even just like I said, I'm an emotional guy. Like, right, like we all. There's not a single one of us that don't like have emotions. Some of us maybe are just more in tune with some of those emotions, or able to express those emotions or whatever. But you're absolutely right. I appreciate that reframe. I think I've actually heard you talk about that before on your guys' show too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even as a way to celebrate, like I never hear somebody say I'm an emotional person with a posture of celebration.
Yeah.
I I
Yeah.
just don't hear that happening. And I think the reality is if you feel that you are an acutely emotional person, what a gift you have
Mm.
to
Mm,
care for yourself and care for others because you have a greater sense of what you are feeling, which means that you have the easier opportunity to navigate to what you need, which means that you can create safety easier for yourself, which means that you can create safety for other people.
Mm,
Mhm.
That's sick. Why do we not celebrate it that way?
yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, we go, "You shouldn't feel that. Push it down, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, be a man. Men don't have emotions." And it's like,
Mhm.
no, that's that's wild. That's how we misuse and mistreat other people.
Mm,
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm off my soapbox now.
yeah. Preach, Jamie. Jamie can preach.
Yeah. No, it's so good, man. It's a needed this more conversations around this, and yeah, I think even like emotions. Like we could probably break this one episode down into
Sure.
like a whole season of topics and places to dive into that all kind of tie together with vulnerability. And I've seen the power of that, like in my life. I remember I got my start in recovery with Celebrate Recovery.
Nice.
And I was one of the youngest guys in the room, kind of like you guys. Hey, like your sponsor, like, hey, you guys
Mhm.
should date. Like you guys are, young.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
else
yeah.
is on the older side. And I had that same experience. The guys were married, get, 20, 30 plus years, like on the verge of divorce because of addiction and things like that. And I remember sitting there like, gosh, like what do I have to offer like these guys? Like they're so seasoned, like they've got so much life, and here I am, this 20 something, like just entering in, and just remember like I'm like, well, I can share my story, like and just share where I'm at, man. And I saw the power of opening up.
Yeah.
And I lead our men's ministry at our church here in Southern Maryland. And on our very first men's retreat a few years ago, I shared my testimony. And man, that set this incredible tone for the whole weekend because guys were coming up left and right, just sharing, me too, man. Like, hey, how did you do this? How did you do that? Like, because when you're vulnerable with others, and this is where it gets to like in groups and things like that, there's such a beauty and the power of the vulnerability because it unlocks something for others, for them to get in touch with that own part of themselves that maybe
Right.
has been locked away for a little while.
Yep. Yeah. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blake says that
Mm.
a lot.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. And it's so true. Yeah. As a like listeners, yeah, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And it's not, and I don't want to make it just like, oh yeah, so just be vulnerable. Like it's great. It's easy. Man, it is, it's probably the hardest work of recovery. Would
Nice.
you guys
Yeah.
say, would you guys say that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tell him, Aaron.
Still every day. Like we're doing this, doing the work we do as therapists and with 3%, and it's still the hardest thing. And
Mhm.
I'm really glad you made that point because not only is it hard, the if you're somebody listening and you've experienced the pain of not being vulnerable, and then you get a glimmer of the hope or the healing of being vulnerable, then it's tempting to trade one extreme for the other and then start being vulnerable with everybody.
Ooh, yeah, tell him.
And not
Mm,
everybody deserves one of the things that we
yeah.
say is not everybody deserves to know your 3%.
Yeah.
I remember early on, one of my first therapists, that was my story. Lack of vulnerability. Nobody knew anything about me. That led to a suicide attempt in high school. That led to addiction, all this stuff, like lots of
Hmm.
pain. And then I have this experience in recovery where I'm like, oh, this is one of the things that I've been missing that's led to these painful experiences. And now I want that with everybody. And I remember my therapist in passing say, not everybody deserves, like, not everybody needs to know everything. So it's okay.
Mm,
And I was like, it blew my mind. It was so profound. And there's probably, he just said it so nonchalantly.
hmm.
And so that's, I think, an important thing is learning, like, yes, vulnerability. We're advocating for vulnerability, for sharing your 3%. And as equally as important as being vulnerable is learning who is safe, who deserves to hold that, and sometimes you experience that in like a recovery program or with a mentor or um, obviously we're going to be advocates of therapy being therapists, but that's one of the things I will work with clients who maybe I, as their therapist, am the first safe person who has held or cultivated their vulnerability. And then we can use that as sort of a barometer of uh you're like testing the water a little bit of who can actually hold this well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's sacred. Your vulnerability is
So sacred.
sacred. And
Mm, love it.
um
And if somebody's not addressing their own vulnerability, it's going to be hard for them to hold yours as
Mm,
sacred.
mhm,
yeah. And I think there's a few things with that too, is like who is safe for you? And
mhm,
then what does safe mean?
mhm,
Because interest this is Blake would know. This is a more recent thing that I'm realizing we need to discuss of like what does 3% imply and what does it not imply? I think there's a reality to which your actions, what lives in your 3% have consequences.
Yeah.
mhm,
And what lives in your 3% just because it has consequences, what we are advocating for is not that someone holds and hides the
mhm,
necessity of you owning your actions to those who you have harmed. Like, we
mhm,
still are big believers in repentance.
mhm,
The what we are advocating for is that 3% creates the space that your actions are not who you are.
Hmm.
mhm,
So 3% gives you the ability to have someone be a safe place for you to land imperfectly and then invite someone into care for you as you try to heal and grow from those things.
Well said.
And so there is freedom on the other side of sharing your 3% with somebody, even though sometimes freedom looks like repenting from things that we have done that we're not proud of. But you don't
mhm.
have the opportunity to repent and grow from those things if that 3% isn't shared. And
Yeah.
so the person on the other side of receiving that,
Yeah.
what makes them safe is not that they hide things with you. What makes them safe is that they're willing to hold those things with you and walk with you and care for you as you own and live and become like Christ.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. No, that's, I love what you said there about, and it's so true. Like, the actions have consequences, right? And that's where the shame, I think, shame is probably one of the biggest things that keep people stuck in that place uh, of that vulnerability because it's paralyzing.
Yeah.
If I let you in, are you gonna accept me? Are you gonna, blah blah blah. I talk with guys in coaching all the time. There's this phrase, and I'm sure you guys have heard this too. Like, if they only knew who I really was, and I'm like,
Hmm.
who are you really? Like,
Not a
that's a
bit.
shame. That's a shame statement, right? You're saying, like, this is how you're thinking about yourself in this moment. And you're like, what would you say about yourself? I'm a this, I'm a that, right? And it's like, if they really knew me, they would run or they wouldn't like. That's not the real you, and that's where shame convinces us that what we've done is who we are,
Yeah.
instead of like you're saying, like, no, there's a separation between that and the self, and there are consequences, right? Like our actions do, bear consequences. Good actions a lot of times have some good consequences, and we wouldn't call those necessarily consequences, but it's still that relationship. It's a consequence of this other thing happening.
Yeah.
And so I love how you guys kind of, talk about that. So I guess another question for me is, how does somebody find that then? Like, how do you know who can be that safe person? If we got listeners right now thinking like, man, like, we did a webinar not too long ago, and one of the questions at the end of it was, "Hey, I'm a part of a church, um, and I want to start, doing some of this kind of entering into more kind of, maybe sexual recovery type stuff or whatever with guys in my church, and like, but nobody's like expressing any interest or want like, so to me, I'm like that, this guy feels so alone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how does somebody find that safety to be able to enter into that vulnerability? What would you guys say?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm gonna lead with
you
I'm gonna lead
go.
with a story.
Yeah, hit them.
Awesome.
I'll lead with a story, and then I'll explain why. I was working with this client, late 40s, uh, and he every year would go on this fly fishing trip with his buddies from college. They'd always go to like this beautiful destination, different parts of the country, and go fly fishing. And he'd done it for however many 20 years or something. And he was in a tough spot in his life and in his marriage, and he the 3% concept was something that resonated with him, and that was helping him work through his own story. And he his friendships kind of lacked a level of vulnerability and intimacy that he wanted. Anyways, he was talking about going on this trip, and I was encouraging him to share with these guys, like with his friends, kind of what he was going through. And he didn't say this directly, but the response was this sort of like, "Well, no, that's what I come to you for. Like, we're gonna go have fun and catch fish. I'm not gonna let them know what's really going on." And I'm like, "Dude, these are your friends from college. You guys do this once a year. What's the point of going if you can't do that?" Not in a shaming way, and I didn't say that directly, but long story short, he goes, very courageously decided to start to share with some of the guys what was really going on, and he came back from that trip, and I'll never forget it, like, reported that it was the best trip that they ever had. They didn't actually catch any fish that year, but he said there's maybe a group of 10, 12, and about 6 other guys opened up about something that was
Mm,
really going on in their lives, and he was like, "Blake, we would have gone, fished, had a good time, talked about sports and work, and left, and nobody would have known what was actually going on in our lives."
mm,
So I use that story as an example to say there might be people, like, in your vicinity that are longing for the same thing you are, but you don't know. And I always share this with people that are asking, like, they're expressing this longing. And then I'll be like, "Well, do you think any of your friends or coworkers or people that you do life with, do they know that you have this longing?" And they're like, "Well, no, because 'cause I've never really talked about it." And I was like, "So does that mean that maybe one of them could be having the same longing and you don't know because 'cause they've not talked about it?" They're like, "Yeah, I
mm,
guess." So, it can get a little again, it can get nuanced, and there are certainly people who you think are safe and maybe aren't, and you don't experience that until you take some risks. But I think that there are people around you who want this, um, and there's an element to which maybe you could speak to this, Jamie, where like you test the waters a little bit. 3% sharing your 3% does not have to look like sharing your deepest, darkest secret.
mm,
3% could be, "Hey, I really, um, like, this desire I have for friendship." Like, that's vulnerable to say. I wanna talk about things just beyond
Yeah.
news, weather, and sports.
Like, where on the spectrum of vulnerability are you with this person as of now? Because you don't
Mhm,
have to jump
mm,
all the way to 100.
mhm.
You can
mhm,
maybe you're at 50,
Yeah,
go to 60.
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and only you can really determine what 60 is for you, but, every step beyond what you are comfortable with now is gonna feel stretching.
Mhm,
Mm,
And, one thing that I often say to people I work with is that it will always feel like a choice. Vulnerability is not something that will happen to you. It is something you will choose.
mhm,
mhm,
And so I say compassionately to everybody listening to this, I know it's scary and I know it's a big ask. And that I'm not asking you to do something because I want you to do a hard thing. we ask the people we work with to do this because we know that it will change your life, and it is
Yeah.
worth doing, not because it's a hard thing that we think is, holy or whatever. Like we have seen this change our lives, and that's why we encourage it in other people. I also think it is important to highlight that on the trip that Blake was talking about, there were like 4 to 6 guys who didn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you are experiencing, like, you'll share something and you'll be like, ah, dang, they were all talking about how all these dudes shared on that trip. I want to highlight there are people who will be around vulnerability who may not be going through anything. I mean, good for them. And then
Mm.
also who may still, when they're around it, be terrified of bringing themselves to it. And and that's a reality that actually says something about where they are, not where you are. And
Great point.
and so, like, I think it was deeply courageous of Blake's client to share of himself. Again, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. The steps to get there are small. Stack them. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. That another thing to highlight is that Blake's client had decades of relational equity with these people. So there's decades of safety built there. He chose people who were safe, not some guy that he just met. So make sure, again, highlighting, you need to do this with someone who's safe. Don't start with everybody. Start with the safest person you know. If you are looking to build safety with someone because you don't have I have worked with plenty of people who don't have the gift, and I do mean the gift of a good friendship. I have worked with plenty of people who don't have one. And if you are looking to build your first one, I will tell you what Scott Erickson said on our podcast, is that there are people out there who are looking for friendship with you as well. You may just be looking in the wrong place for your friendship. Notice where people are in proximity to you that you may be ignoring because they're not the person you are, like, seeking friendship with. Because there's opportunity for friendship around you, and it is looking in the places where the opportunity is, and the grass is not greener on the other side. The grass will be greener where you water it. So where that friendship is available, water that friendship. And then as you water that friendship and develop the 10%, 20%, 30% vulnerability, you'll get to the place where you have an opportunity for 3%. And if you still need a tool all the way there, I know I'm getting verbose here. If you still need a tool when you're at like 90% and you're like, I'm still so freaking scared of this last 10%, use our podcast. Share an episode with them that's in the topic that you're scared to share about.
It's facilitated a lot of conversations.
It has. Share it and say, hey, there's some stuff in this that I want to talk about, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. And then just allow that to be the door opening to get in there. And again, even once you open that door, it's still going to be scary. It's still going to be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's always going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Maybe you don't share everything all at once. It was uncomfortable for us, and we met in 12-step. Like, it was still chosen. There's still a reason we needed the permission slip to share it. There's a reason this exists at all, is because we needed language to give us permission to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
it's beautiful.
that was a lot, but there you go.
No, it's good. And it makes me think too, as Jay Stringer talks about Wanted, about, so often we are hurt by others, but we also find healing through others, right? And it does require that vulnerability to enter into that. Another quote too I've heard in recovery is, that I'm blanking. I just had it a second ago. The opposite of addiction is connection. Right. And so to find, find your people, as Drew Holtman, the Neighbors, sing about, find your people. I was thinking of that song right now. Anyway, but there's something, I think there's actually some really good nuggets in there, man. Talking about, find the people, the ones that are gonna, be with you, in the thick and the thin, and not run, and know the difference between, like, hey, this isn't who you are. But that type of thing. So um
And gosh, just to reiterate, Aaron, that's real safety, man. Like,
yeah,
the people who hold you accountable and don't go anywhere.
Yep.
That's
yeah,
safe.
yeah, yeah, right. I've seen that too with others, right? It's like, all right, what was your experience? Like, I mean, I shared this and they stayed. Like,
Yeah,
they
dude.
didn't go anywhere. They didn't look at me like I was some freak or, whatever. It was just like, holy crap, this person is with me right
Yeah.
now in the midst of what I just shared.
Well, and accountability for me at a young age was treated with harm, you know?
Mm, yeah.
So, like, the a big roadblock for, I think, many people in the Christian faith is, like, what did accountability mean to you growing up, and how was it treated? Like, were you condemned and punished when you did wrong? Because what we're in pursuit of here is healing, becoming like Christ, um, and being known and loved. And so the purpose of accountability now is to find freedom. And so the purpose of sharing your 3% is, um, yeah, is just that, man. Like, when people stay now, that you're navigating that roadblock of shame, so that you can experience what it really is to be loved.
Mhm.
That's what we hope for everybody who shares their 3%, is that they can experience, maybe for the first time, what it is to be fully known and fully loved.
Yeah. Amen, man.
Yep.
And you feel that, like, that there's so much hope in that. And that's such a good, I don't know, it's just even a stepping stone. I don't know why, but Ezekiel 47 is coming to mind, that's where the river starts from the temple as like a trickle. And
Mm.
Ezekiel sees this priest, and he measures out 4 different times, and invites Ezekiel to come deeper in and deeper in.
Mm.
I've often heard that associated. It's actually like a life verse of mine, but I've heard it more associated with like an invitation to come deeper into God's love. But I even see it now as like this invitation to get deeper into vulnerability.
Wow.
And no matter where you're at, there's an invitation to, hey, just, you're at 90, 6%. Like,
Mhm.
let's get to that final 4, and then the 3, and so there's just this invitation, and that is such the Lord's heart
Yeah, dude.
behind all this,
Yeah.
is just the invitation to, like, hey, I know you, and I'm still here. Like, I haven't gone
Woo!
anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. "Come to me,
Yeah,
all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I
yeah,
will give you rest." Yeah, dude.
yeah. Amen. Amen. Guys, what's the final thing that you would share just about vulnerability with a listener today?
I think so. This is something I've been talking about lately, so this comes to mind.
Yeah.
You've probably heard a lot, if you're on social media in the mental health space at all, about gaslighting. And um, I think that when it comes to our vulnerability, the first person that we gaslight is not someone else, it's ourselves.
Mhm.
So we will convince ourselves that we don't have to be vulnerable about something. And we have so convinced ourselves or befriended that we are rejectable, that we're not worth loving if we're known, if that we are unworthy of the gift of grace, which,
Mhm.
grace is a gift freely given to us. So, uh, we will convince ourselves of that, and in order to maintain that, we will convince others that they're seeing something and they're crazy.
Mhm.
And so the last thing that I would say about vulnerability is navigating to it may feel like you're navigating through some of these protective lies that you've
Mhm.
created. Like, you may be
Mhm.
so familiar with things that you created to take care of you that you don't know what it is to be vulnerable because you have a hard time being vulnerable with yourself.
Mhm.
And so some of that is going to start with having the compassion to go, where are the places that I have built protective walls around my 3%
Yeah.
that even I'm not allowed into?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Dude, that's good.
Yeah.
You
I'm
what
gonna
you, Blake?
I'm gonna actually be short and sweet
Yeah, do it.
Hey.
and see if I don't expound on it.
Nice.
Vulnerability is exposure, and exposure is an act of grace if you allow it to be.
Hey.
Period.
Exclamation point.
Oh,
Yeah,
all
or
right.
period.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm going to talk then so you don't expand. Now, hey, guys, as we wrap up today, is there anything that you guys want to highlight, just as in way of what you're doing? And I know I could talk about the basement, but it's not cool if I talk about it because it's like something that you guys have, and I'm sure it could bless some of our listeners. But yeah, anything you guys have coming up, or just kind of want to take a little bit of time to highlight?
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we're going to hopefully be.
A lot of things in the works.
Yeah, we are a company that is in a building phase, and so it feels like we are consistently coming up with new things right now. One of the cool things that we hope to do soon is to create even like an assessment to understand where your 3% may be hiding in yourself. But one of the resources we have as of right now that we think could be helpful to people. One, if you go to our website and you're interested in some just emotional regulation, noticing what's going on within yourself, inviting God and others into that, we have a 4-step method that you can find called the Pause, Pray, Process, Express method. It's on our website that you can just sign up for. The second, and that's free. That's a free resource. You can go check it out, 3percentco.com. The second resource is The Basement. That's a paid community. And in there, we offer reflection guides, weekly reflection guides for our episodes, and a monthly Q&A episode that is just for our basement community.
Where they ask questions. And
they ask questions. We answer them on a podcast episode that is exclusive for them. And that one is about 2 lattes per month. It's $10 a month.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe one latte.
Maybe one latte. Yeah, that's right. So those are the 2 big things. And then, of course, our podcast comes out every Monday.
Yep.
And we have 50 episodes now that you can certainly go find one where you might see a piece of yourself in what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
So subscribe to that and send it to every single one of your friends.
Yeah. I know. I've shared it, man. Like I said earlier, Andrea. Shout out to Andrea on staff. She shared.
Thank you, Andrea.
You guys with me, yeah. And I've shared several episodes with friends who I know of, like going through different things. Like you said, it's such a beautiful way to even enter in. Like maybe I want to say something to my friend, but I don't know exactly how to enter in. So I share this. Hey, I know what's going on. A little bit like, hey, listen to this. Like, let's talk. How did that hit you? What were you resonating with? Like, what was hard? Like, such a beautiful doorway to really great conversation. So, yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining me today on Becoming Whole. And as I go out here, I just want to say a closing word. That at the end of the day, vulnerability is a risk. It's going to cost you something. It might be your image, it could be your comfort or your control. But staying hidden will actually cost you more. It'll cost you connection. It will cost you freedom. It will cost you the life that you were actually made for. So the question, listeners, isn't if you're going to risk something, it's what you're willing to risk. Because on the other side of vulnerability is the life you've been longing for. A life where you're not performing, but known. Not managing, but free. Not alone, but connected. And that's the invitation. And it starts with vulnerability and telling the truth. Let me pray us out. Jesus, thank you so much for your presence in our lives. For even the places now that you might be stirring within us, Lord, that are or feel vulnerable. And Lord, by your grace, would you just gently move us Lord, deeper and deeper into these places of vulnerability. That no matter where we're at, Lord, with our own experience and journey of vulnerability, Lord, that there's an invitation, Lord, to go deeper and to share more, or with those that we feel safe with, Lord. And so just show us those people, Lord, show us those opportunities and moments to allow ourselves to open up, Lord, and to experience greater healing and wholeness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.